The strategy I'm going to show you in this video is if any spikes happen in local, if you see something on D-scan, if something comes on grid with you while you're mining, then you can instantly warp off and have high survivability while also maintaining really good yield. And then if anything happens, if you're like, you're going to be checking D-scan and all that stuff like that, if anything comes in that makes you feel, any troubling thing at all, then all you have to do is warp and everybody will warp together instantly, the whole fleet. I'm going to line out all the requirements and the steps in the description, but for the video I'm going to be explaining why this works and some things you have to understand. Once you actually get good at this strategy, it'll become second nature and you'll be mining like this in high sec, in null sec, no matter what. This is actually one of the biggest reasons why you want to use a harvest implant set. That's why you want like really long strip miner range, because it allows you to stay on grid longer. Every ship in Eve, when it gets to 3/4 speed, it'll instantly warp. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using that to our advantage as miners, and this will allow us to instantly get off grid. What you will need on every toon is navigation 5, or at least have them all at the same level of navigation. We want to actually regulate our speed so that we can adjust everything. That way we can line it all up. We'll start off with the ORCA here. Navigation 5. Our target here is around 51.9 meters a second. We achieved this by actually putting 2 expanded cargo hold 2s in the lows. We don't worry about tank, because if anything comes on grid, we're going to instantly just leave. The expanded cargo holds will actually lower our overall speed, so we want to be around 51.9. For the hulks, we're going to be using a HIGGS anchor. What this does is it increases the mass of our ship and thus lowering our overall speed. With navigation 5, we want to target our target top speed for our hulk. We want to be 40 meters a second. The next thing we want to do on the alts themselves is we want to go over here to our selection window. Right here where you see my mouse. We want to right click on this keep it range and we want to select set default. One of our alts is going to be set to 1500 meters and the other one will be set to 750. The reason we do this is so that they have adequate spacing when they're actually behind the ORCA, and since they'll both be going full speed, once we hit warp there will be no bumping. You can adjust this depending on how many alts you have, but every one of your alts needs to be within 2500 meters of the ORCA, because we will not be using a industrial core, so we will not be compressing while we're on grid. So we want to be able to make sure that every alt has access to the fleet hangar, and they have to be within 2500 meters in order to dump there. The next thing we'll be talking about is bookmarks, and the way this is going to work is we want to have, this works perfectly in high sec because the belts never actually move, so you can actually set this up on every belt, and after every reset you can just go to whatever bookmark your start bookmark is at, and you don't have to keep redoing it. If you're in null, the anomalies are going to change, so you have to like do a pre-scout and set all this up. But essentially the idea here is, we'll just kind of illustrate this a little bit. This is essentially our escape point, this Athenor right here, and then we'll say where we're at right now or somewhere in this area is the mining belt or the asteroid belt. We're going to have a start nav on the opposite side, so we want the mining belt, the asteroid belt, and then our escape point, and then we want our start nav out here. I roughly place the start nav. The distance between the start nav and the first rock is going to be roughly the distance that your hulks can reach with their strip miner, and you always want to be aligning through or past the belt and above it, so that when we get to that start nav and we start moving, we're going to be moving through the belt, aligning towards our escape point, which can be a pause, it can be another nav somewhere, or it can be a refinery. If you're in a pause or you just undocked, what you want to do is you can warp everybody, normally if you want. I usually try to do a little bit of a setup while we're still in tether range. The ORCA is not moving right now, and we don't really have to worry about regulating the ORCA's speed when we're heading to grid. So what we'd be doing is we'd be aligning to our start nav. These alts are already set to keep at range, so they're just going to follow this guy. And then what we'll do is once everybody gets up to speed, we'll basically just warp everybody to the start nav. I usually let everybody kind of align and get up to speed, even where we're outside of the structure here. Open fleet hangars, make sure everything is good. Once everybody is there, we're going to go here. We're going to go to warp the fleet to our location at 0. And what that's going to do is it's going to take everybody all at once, since we're already all kind of set up. Getting used to doing this is going to just speed up the entire process for you, because this is exactly what you're going to do to get to grid, and this is exactly what you're going to do to get off grid. If you have rats when you first hit the belt, what I normally do with that is I just release drones on every character. I don't worry about targeting the rats. Once they actually attack one of the hulks or the orca, then the drones will just automatically go out there. If you have them set to aggressive, they'll automatically go out there and kill them. We're going to have enough stuff to worry about once we get to grid and everything like that. As you can see, we're landing right on our start nav. As you can see, we're really far away from the belt. As you can see, this would be 0. We're about 87 kilometers from where a normal warp in at 0 would be for the belt. The closest rock is about 65 kilometers from where we're at right now, but my alt's strip miner range is around 68, and that's what I want. Is I want this start nav to be almost at their max mining range point, because we're going to be moving. What we're going to be doing here is when we start, we're going to be moving through the belt back towards the refinery. Let's go ahead and get with the initial setup here. What I'll do is when we first hit grid, I will go to each of the alts, and since this is all set up already, I will just click on the orca, and then I'll just hit keep it range. As you can see, this one's going to start keep it ranging 1500 meters. I'll go to the next alt, do the same thing, click keep it range. If you haven't already opened fleet hangars and stuff like that, you right click on the orca, open the fleet hangars on all of them. Now what I'm going to do is, the first thing I do before I start aligning, and you're going to be doing this all pretty quick, we're going to go down here to our speed, and we're going to go to around the 3/4 mark. We're going to be aiming for around 40. We want to be less than 40 or right at 40. And we're going to set that. We're going to set that range or that speed. I usually like to do like 39.7, just so we're not outpacing the hulks. Once we actually set that speed, we're going to go ahead and align the orca to our escape point. And what it'll do is it'll flip around and it'll start to move. Now what we're doing here is, you can see the blue line. The blue line is going to be representing our alignment and the direction we're going to be going. And so as you can see, this blue line is going to go through this asteroid belt. We also have our nav set slightly above the rocks, because we don't want to actually fly through the rocks, because we'll bounce off of them. So we're going to be flying through the belt and over the top towards that Athenor way out there in the distance. And we're going to be moving pretty slow. And that's the purpose. We want to be moving slow, because the slower we're moving, the more time we have on grid, the more we can mine before we have to reset. And since we want a really high, really high mining range, so each of my alts right now has 33 unboosted, but there'll be 68 when I turn on burst. And the reason we want to do that is because while we're way out here away from the belt, we can get basically this whole corner. And as we get closer and start moving through, we'll be able to get the midpoint. And as we get out on the backside and we start going towards the Athenor and away from the belt, we'll still have about 68 kilometers to keep mining. So you can pretty much mine for about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how things go for you. But as you see here, it takes a little while for all of the alts to kind of get behind. You can help them out by manually moving. You can go to the alts and hold down Q and kind of position them behind the orca, but I usually just kind of let them fall into place. They'll do it naturally. The next thing you want to do is actually turn on all your burst, because we can just start mining at this point. So we have everything turned on. We're moving, we're aligned, everybody's kept at range. And then on all these alts, I had their list sorted from shortest distance up. Try not to double laser anything, but what I'll do is basically just start turning on lasers. And we're kind of just chilling out, and you'll be just checking D-scan, you'll be checking local, you know, looking out for anything crazy that might be going on. And I usually just cycle through them. You know, I will empty out their mining holds and put them into the fleet hangar. And that's what you'll do, is all the alts will have the fleet hangar open for the orca. As they start mining stuff into the hulks, we're going to drag all that ore into the fleet hangar. And then when we come back over to the orca, we basically just empty the fleet hangar right into its mining hold. We're not worrying about compression. We're not worrying about the sieging, the industrial core, none of that. The entire purpose here is just to mine, and if anything happens, we just insta warp off. As you see here, everybody's starting to line up. And the other thing too is we're already at 3/4 speed. If we hit warp right now, the ORCA is going to instantly go off grid. We're also already at full speed on the alts as well. So they're roughly already facing enough towards the Athenor that they're going to go instantly. Now I'll illustrate that right now. I don't want this video to run too long. It's a very basic concept once you understand what's going on. So let's say we're mining, and you can keep adjusting this as you need to, the bookmarks and all that. But so you're here, you're mining, you're doing your thing. You might see something on D-scan, you might see something on local, whatever. We're going to go on the ORCA, we're going to go to escape point, and we're going to go warp fleet to location. And they'll instantly just warp together. This strategy is extremely popular for a lot of null sec and low sec and even high sec mining. It allows you to take a ton of alts out to grid with you, to have really high yield, have really nice implants, have really good modules. And whenever you just get good at D-scan, you get good at looking at local, and you see any, and with high yield, that's the thing is, when the higher yield you have, the more alts you have on grid, the faster you're going to make ISK. And so the less time you have to mine overall per day. And when you have the ability with this strategy to just instantly warp off, let's say you only get like 20 minutes on grid with your, let's say, ORCA, and let's say you have 5 hulks trailing behind it. Let's say you only get 20 minutes. You're going to do an amazing amount of cubic meters. And if something happens, you can just warp off instantly. If you don't get interrupted and you're able to fill up that ORCA completely, you're still going to warp off probably to a safe spot, compress it, dump it in a station, and then undock and go right back out to your start nav and start again. This is how a lot of people do it. This is why you see miners doing crazy amount of cubic meters and they're not losing their ships, because they're doing strategies like this. You can do this in the Porpoise. You just have to regulate the speed a little bit more, because the Porpoise is a little bit faster inherently. And then you can also do this in the Rorqual and nullsec. The Rorqual will go move a little bit slower, so you just have to play those speeds. So essentially what you want is you want the hulks just to be, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 meters a second, and then your command ship, you want to be close to that. You want to have them, that 3/4 speed on your command ship, to be really close to what the hulks need to be to go off instantly. So hope you enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.